Welcome back to the bunker.
It's awesome to be back.
Hello.
It's been a long time. This is going to be episode 1 of season 3. Season 3.
Nice.
And
Okay.
yeah, it's time to get crazy. So I'm joined this week by the world's most powerful ginger, Beth Harper O'Brien, and my longest compadre,
Hello.
TJ Miller.
A.K.A. Ted Lucius. Mystimus.
True.
I am really excited for this episode.
This has been a long time coming. This is. I'm more excited about this interview than I've been about any interview in a long time, and because it brings together elements of our childhood,
right,
and stories that we've held dear to ourselves for a long time, many years, and high strangeness, psychic phenomena, possible crazy government conspiracy. I don't know what the hell we're even going to be talking about.
I don't even know what.
Yeah. So the starting point for us was we grew up reading Carlos Castaneda and his books about Don Juan and sorcery and awareness and
started our own party of sorcerers.
Really started really looked at the world.
We met the darkness
in the way that we went out into the middle of nowhere in complete darkness to just face whatever the hell was out there, because of the stuff we read in this book. We did shit like that, and these and it's not just us. I mean, there's loads of the Eagles wrote countless songs about stuff in these books. All these bands, teachers, professors, philosophers.
The influence Castaneda had on the culture was phenomenal. It was sick.
Yeah. Yeah. Reading the posts, right after the 60s, basically, that momentum, he just kind of caught that wave and just went with, wrote these stories. And then now there's all kinds of controversy about whether he was legitimate or not, whether this guy, Don Juan, existed, whether any of these experiences or any of these things really happened. There's all these holes in the story.
Right.
And you had pointed out the Trickster podcast to me. It was about
so good.
This it's literally called The Trickster: The Many Lies of Carlos Castaneda, and it goes into in depth calling people and reaching out to people that knew him, dealt with him, that had interactions with him, and really investigated his story and found tons of holes in the tale.
Yeah, and that was to me. We did the. We do the Path Faction, which is our other podcast. We're mainly just talking about philosophy and stuff, and so we're talking about the problem with gurus, anybody like Castaneda, who you give that much power and you just accept what they say, because the Trickster is a great podcast if people get a chance to listen to it.
Oh, it's phenomenal, phenomenal. It's one of the best. And so we come across this podcast and we're listening to this, and it's going into all talking to people that spoke to Castaneda and dealt with him, and all these people that had interactions with him and stuff. And within that story is this story of this Italian director, Federico Fellini, who read Castaneda's work as well and wanted to make a movie out of that first book. Ended up meeting with Castaneda in Rome. Immediately after that, this director, Fellini, starts experiencing weird activity, getting strange phone calls from strangers telling him to do things, to expect things, starts predicting things, starts telling him super intimate details about his life that he's told no one else. Really crazy stuff starts happening.
That's why I think it's so weird. From what I've learned at this point, I think Castaneda was full of it in a ton of ways. And it's just straight up cult behavior, making these women he was sleeping with erase their personal history, get rid of all their other stuff. So don't believe that the Don Juan thing happened the way he said at all.
Yeah.
But weird stuff was still happening. Weird stuff happened with us after reading his books. Definitely altered your consciousness. The stuff he wrote was powerful.
Yeah.
But did it happen, like you said, because he planted this and he messed with people's minds, and then he already put it in your head as a placebo effect?
Well, I think that's the thing too. We were talking about on our podcast, like Bruce Lee, had a great philosophy, but it wasn't even if he turned out to be a total dirtbag, it was just a philosophy the thing with Castaneda is everything is wrapped up with this idea that he went and lived with this Yaqui Indian shaman.
Yeah.
So when that falls apart, it kind of throws all of it, like...
Everything's a question.
Right.
Everything's a question. Yeah. And so, but you touched on a very important point, and that's why we're all sitting here right now, is that weird stuff still continued to happen.
Right.
Around this director, around Castaneda, people that Castaneda dealt with, other professors and so forth, had weird synchronicities and these weird experiences around this guy. So now we're going back and forth, because we're first thinking, oh my God, this guy is amazing, and we followed his philosophy, and then it's like, and then all of a sudden we find all these holes in a story. Now we're like, oh my God, so we jump to this guy's full of shit. This is all crap. What the hell do we do with this? Right. This is stuff we've been like reading and like following in our head, for years.
Yeah.
But then you go back to, okay, well, yeah, but weird things were still happening. This director reaches out to this guy, just agrees to work together with him on a project, and all of a sudden, weird things start happening to him. And and so in the midst of all this, is this director cross paths with this American model, actress, who was living in LA, makes contact with her. She starts getting these weird messages from whatever, these CIA beings, whatever the hell, I don't know, whoever, like these weird voices seem to know everything about everybody. Starts contacting her, and it was on this podcast that we heard her story, because she wrote a book about this experience. I got the book, ordered the book, I got it, read through it, filled it with notes and stuff. I tracked her down, Christina Engelhardt, in the book. I reached out, sent her an email, and she answered the email. And I was like, and I explained our situation, and we were, followed Castaneda for years, and ran across the trickster, and then that brought us to you, and so, like, would you be willing to come on and talk about it? And she said, yeah, absolutely. So
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so Christina herself will be calling in at any moment, and it's going to be telling her story. And, I'm glad you're here, Beth, because Christina was, her grandmother taught her from a very early age how to do readings, and started to teach her about astrology and how the planets worked and energy and all this kind of stuff at a super young age. And so grew up giving readings to like all the neighborhood people. And so it was kind of already psychically, involved in this sort of thing, the thing you do.
Yeah.
Pretty early on. And I'm just wondering, is that the connection? Because throughout this story, this like voice, whoever these beings are, were like compelling her to stay. You have to stay with the green one. They all had colors for whatever reason. Maybe she'll explain. But
it's like a Reservoir Dogs thing.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And but they were instructing, like, you have to stay with Fellini. You have to stay with him and make sure he accomplishes whatever they had in store for him. I don't know.
I've never experienced that, so I'm not sure I understand it, or like I've never, someone's never contacted me and say you have to do this, you got to go there, I've never experienced that, so I'm not sure. I think it's if this is all true, and I'm not saying it's not, but maybe it is from a higher being. Like there's all these different realms and universes and UFOs and all kinds of things. So maybe she was getting contacted from a higher being. Then that goes higher than what I deal with, the spiritual realm. Could be higher than that.
That's what I'm thinking, because when you hear the details of some of these interactions they had with this voice, it was like I was saying before we started recording. This voice was telling them intimate details about each of them, like things they were thinking about, like they hadn't even spoken to other people about, like things that were going on in the room at that moment. Like interacting with them, like, oh, this person needs money to get to here, and it's like the money just appears. Like it seemed intrusive to the level, like beyond, I think, what the CIA would be capable of at that point. I think.
Well, even that, like I said, I said to you before we started, like, why would the CIA give us care? Like they're like, we're gonna mess with this director guy.
Total valid point. I was just thinking this was around the same time, like in the 70s, when they were messing around with mind control, and like maybe they were just testing
maybe.
theory. I don't know. But I was really on the CIA thing for a while reading the book, but then like something just so insane would get thrown in there, and it's like to the point of being supernatural to the extreme. And it's like now I'm like, now I'm thinking what you're thinking. Oh, like who?
Yeah.
It's also, if you think about it too, like a lot of this stuff, like, and not that the government is smart, but just let people talk. Like if there's actually UFOs and stuff and people seen them, just let people talk about it because everybody's gonna think they're crazy.
Yeah.
You don't need to do anything to quash this story. In fact, if you try to do stuff to squash the story, it makes the story keep going. Like if you just let the people come out and talk, like, you know, there's no need to.
There she is.
Do stuff. Oh my goodness.
California?
Uh-oh.
Do you want me to answer it?
We should probably answer you.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Christina.
Hello, Michael. Yes.
Hi, how are you?
Call me back when you're ready, or...
We're ready.
We're ready to go right now.
Very good. I'm just trying to clear my voice. La, 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 la. Hello, hello.
Hello.
I want to have a good, clear diction.
Excellent. You sound great.
Hello.
Very good.
Hi.
So, Christina, we're joined by my teammate, love of my life, Beth, the world's most powerful ginger.
I thought you were talking about
medium.
me.
No.
That's okay.
Hello, how are you?
Very well. And your name is Ginger?
Beth. My name is Beth. I have red hair, so he calls me Ginger.
Oh, yes. Hello, Beth.
Hello.
Christina here. Hello, Michael.
Hi, how are you,
So we're
Christina?
A beautiful trine of powerful energy right now, the three of us.
Well, there's one more.
One more.
There's another one here. Yeah,
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Yeah, we're joined by my friend.
Hi.
We're joined also by my friend TJ, who, along with me, he's the one who introduced me to Carlos Castaneda, and so we grew up reading all these stories, and so, you know, that's why he's here, because he's intimately connected to that part of the story as far as, you know, my part of the tale.
He's your childhood friend forever, too.
Yeah,
Yeah, long
absolutely.
time. Yeah.
So I think Christina, I know your time's limited, so I want to just jump right into it. So
Sure.
let's start with like your origin story and how you, because I'm interested in the psychic angle to this and the psychic phenomena, the paranormal activity, however you want to describe that, and your introduction to that and how that sort of transitioned you and brought you into this sort of crazy tale.
Yes. So with no further ado, my name is Bobby Christina Engelhardt, and my parents are immigrants from Germany, and we go back to visit regularly. And I knew since a child that my mother's mother, grandmother, was doing cards and tarot, and my mother would always rave about her mother that during the war, when nobody knew whose husband would come home or where the next food or meal would come, and she would do tarot cards just to help ends meet, get food on the table. But it was a gift that she learned from her grandmother, and that grandmother learned from her grandmother, and it was the first granddaughter. That was how it sequenced. So when I visited and I saw the cards out, now mind you, this is not the classical tarot deck writer's way that with the 78 cards. It was just the playing cards, and it was certain specific cards, but it was a 24-card spread, but there she was laying in it and giving my mother a reading, and I was drawn to it as early as I can remember. And I said, I want to know, and of course, you're too young, come back in a few years. You're the one I'm supposed to be teaching, said my grandmother, but not yet. And then upon the next year, now I'm about 6 years on the following trip, I come back and I want to know. And just out of pestering, she finally said, okay, here's your lesson. This. And then 5 minutes, she just rambled through all the cards. And I looked and my brain went boom, 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 like kinetic. And I started seeing the images just from her sureness of the symbols. And then from that moment on, I just found everybody I could read for, everyone, and I just tried that over. And then by the time I was 10, I got my first tarot deck, and I was reading. And I never thought I was to charge or make a business. I just thought, this is my gift. I'm going to do this forever. And I always envisioned myself as a sweet little old lady, being able to do that till literally my last living breath. I just felt this was such a natural talent. By the age of 15, I immersed myself into astrology. By 20, I was already doing sidereal astrology, which is also Vedic astrology, and tropical astrology, and knowing the houses, the asteroids, and it was, for me, a full-fledged indoctrine of this is my path. I come from a lineage of mediums, and I did a 23andMe, and I had Egyptian in me, and some Neanderthal. So yes, I go way back. So nothing surprises our authenticity, and I just felt, oh, no wonder that I'm picking up on certain energies and why I'm attracted to certain pyramids and certain things. And of course, my studies took me into not just all the metaphysical arts, but theology. I needed then to study religion, because I found that when you do readings for people, you have to truly do a reading properly, you have to also know their customs, their rules, their laws, and you have to show respect, because not that, two different nationalities will think or feel different, but their customs, because truly, to honor someone's customs and traditions, all of those traditions have an authenticity, an origin where it was about, finding divinity in your ancestors and the lineage. Then by the age of, then also in my teenage years, I met a psychic in New York, Geri DeMarlo, who was like psychic mama. She was just wonderful. Now, she knew astrology, and I was very good at the cards. So we made an exchange. She taught me more on astrology. I showed her what I knew on tarot, and then we were friends. It just kept going. And in her many, many readings for me, Geri would, predict that this and that would happen. And everything she said always happened. So I already thought, okay, this is my psychic. She just was so important for me. Until one day, she looks at my chart, she looks at my cards and says, that's enough, you got to get out of New York. Leave. And I mean, she said this in a very forceful way, get out. You're supposed to go to Los Angeles, be there by October 20th. You will meet a very famous Italian director. You're going to travel to Rome. You're going to hear voices from outer space. Get out. Now, backtrack a little bit. Since she had never been wrong, and I kept thinking to myself, Rome, Italian. I knew Spanish. I had friends from Spain, and I thought, well, I possibly would go there. But no, she was very, very distinct. Now, in our friendship, and as I said, I treated her like a psychic mama. We always knew in our conversations between her, because I could tell her things that I really couldn't tell anyone else about my sensitivity. As a child, I would stare at things, and I truly believed that I could move things. But of course, later on, as you're an adult, those are called childish things and child imagination. But I had a super vivid, and one of the things I always felt that I was watched by some kind of invisible eye, and I always felt that just in any dark alley, and it wasn't like a boogeyman or a monster, it was some higher being. I always felt that, and I also connected with angels. My last name is Engelhardt, so I just felt the presence, and that is probably why I was so deeply involved and wanted to know about theology, because in Christianity and certain religions, in Judaism, there's these great angels that come as messengers. So, and a lot of religions use the word as messengers, angelic messengers. And to this day, we don't even know who created the pyramids and how the exact due north the pyramid points are and the mathematical things. So, since that was always my interest, I always thought there was definitely an outside ability, and remind myself and to anyone that when you're an astrologer and an astronomer and you look up at the stars and you pay any attention to science, there's not a doubt in my mind in the unlimited amount of stars, galaxies, Milky Ways throughout, the heavens, infinite, there has to be a possibility of Earth. And there has to be far more intelligence than here on Earth, because we're still doing very primitive things with all our great science. So those are always the contradictions I had about being here on Earth, knowing great people to do great things, and then other people to still do very negative things. And so that was the element that I had wished for something greater to come by. And that was always something that when I felt that, something watching, I would actually feel it was either never a negative or devil. I'd always feel it'd be something on a higher source that I could communicate with. So that's just a little backstory. So lo and behold, and Geri DeMarlo told me this. This is 1984. It was September of 1984, and she said, head out. And I knew the following year would be the harmonic conversion. So I just felt like, okay, this is time to shift and change. Geri says I have to go to LA. I gave up my apartment, bought a car, loaded it up with my essentials, drove straight through to Los Angeles. I had been there a few times. Now, on another note, because I have a big personality, I was already modeling and acting. I was the right height. I had a certain look. And I already had a big life by the time I was 15 or 16, just with a certain amount of celebrities that I was very close with. And there I am. Now in 1984, I'm 23. So I already had this big life in New York City and traveled the world, but okay, we're going to Los Angeles. I'm driving, and as soon as I get to LA, I just stopped the car, and I had a friend drive with me, and he says, oh, Christina, you can't park here. It says do not park, but I pulled into space number 13. And I said, yeah, but nobody has this apartment. And my friend looked at me like, oh, okay. As we stepped out of the car, I heard someone yell across the fence, hey, lady, you can't park there. And then lo and behold, I yelled out, well, nobody has apartment 13. And the guy says, yeah, that's right. I said, I'll take it. Instantly, I got an apartment, and it was a furnished apartment. I was like, boy, I'm on a roll. And literally, coming to Los Angeles, things were falling into place. It was quite unique. Now comes January 20th. So now 6 or 8 weeks later, I came in preparation, and I had a friend stay with me because she didn't want to be alone, and I said, fine. And she said, oh, you want to go out to lunch? You want to do this? I said, no, today's October 20th. I don't know what to do, but I'm going to stand by the phone. I don't know what I'm waiting for. And I thought maybe I should go out to lunch with her. And I said, no, when you don't know what to do, stop and think and just be. Lo and behold, the phone rings around 6:30 in the evening, so I waited all day. And it was a girl that I knew. Her and I had a fallout. I trusted her, and she broke the trust. It was very disappointing, but, she calls me out of the blue and says, you don't like me and I don't like you, but I have a dinner with an Italian director and I can't go alone. And I called everyone, and you're at the bottom of my shit list, and I'm desperate to go, but I can't go alone. Those are requirements, and would you go? Now, normally I would have said the big F word and hung up on her, but she didn't know that I was there, so I said, yes, I'll show up. And she goes, well, give me your address, and a car will come pick you up. And lo and behold, a limo comes, picks me up an hour and a half later. I get down, I get into the car, and there she is. Sybil, we'll call her Sybil. And this entourage of men. And hello, and I'm Federico Fellini. So, oh my, Mr. Fellini, I love your movies. Oh, what an honor. So now we're driving to a restaurant, Trader Vic's, which is now no longer there. But Trader Vic's was a very famous restaurant for many years. So we sat down, and with this table of 8, and we're all eating food, and Sybil says, oh, Mr. Fellini, Christina, she does tarot and astrology. And he said, oh, I like that. Oh, well, I'm spiritual. And she opens up her purse and says, see, I'm spiritual because I have a crystal. So I open my purse, and I pull out a crystal. And she opens her purse, pulls out another crystal. I open my purse, and I hand out everybody at the table. Fellini's laughing. This is a Fellini scene right here. I said, okay, we're all spiritual evening was one of those tete-a-tete with Sybil. And so the evening's coming to, an end. We finish our dinner, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I left New York for a dinner. Okay, so as we're getting back into the car, I said to the entourage and Mr. Fellini, I said, can I invite you all up to my apartment? I have a slideshow of the world. I take some very unique photos. I'd love to invite you. And Federico said, yeah, sure. He brings his entourage. Of course, Sybil, the dancer, she was a dancer, says, no, I'm too busy. I have to be at the ballet in the morning. Okay, so she went off. And so now I have Fellini's entourage, and, I turn on my projector, and I'm flashing against the wall large sizes of images from Hawaii, where I've been all around the world as a photographer. Now I'm showing pictures of Tulum, Chichen Itza, Uxmal, and, just the whole Cancun Peninsula. But when I come to the Mayan architects, especially of Tulum and Chichen Itza, Federico looks at me and he goes, do you know? Did they call you? Did they tell you? Do you hear the voices?
Oh my God.
And I'm thinking, okay, I don't know your voices. I hear my own. I wasn't quite sure. And okay, thank you very much. Beautiful slideshow. And they leave. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I give up everything for a dinner and a slideshow. And they're gone. And I sat up all night thinking, this was meant to be something. I mean, that Geri predicted, the Italian director, on this stage. So I stayed up all night throwing my ruins, my I Ching, my coins, anything and every metaphysical art I had, and just wrote pages all night long. Now it's crack of dawn, and I'm thinking, I have to give him this. But what hotel was he staying at? I have no idea. So I think I'm going to have to call every hotel. And as you know, most celebrities don't leave their first name.
Right.
All right, fine. First hotel I called, he was there. I got it in the first try, which was the Hilton. And maybe in the back of my mind as we ate at Trader Vic's. We had our dinner at Trader Vic's, which is near the Hilton. I don't know, I took a first shot, and yes, Mr. Fellini is here. Great. I didn't need to know his room number. I threw a jogging suit on. I drove to the hotel. And I stand at the concierge in line with my little manila envelope with pages and pages of notes and little things. I just didn't know what to do. So as I'm standing in line, it's like 6:45 or 7 in the morning. And as I'm standing, there's a few people in line. I'm kind of just with my eyes half closed. The person in front of me turns around, grabs me by the shoulders, and starts shaking me. And I look up, and it's Fellini. And I say, Mr. Fellini, oh my God, hello. He said, and he pulls me aside, we have to talk. He goes, what are you doing here? I said, well, I came to give this to you. And he said, so they called you, they told you, the voices. I said, I don't know about your voices, but I just had to give this package to you. And he said, come with me, we're going up to my room. And there his entourage is waiting. And then he sits me down. He said, the voices told me that I should be exactly at 6:59 standing at the concierge, and the chosen one would be there. And it's you. So you're coming with us. And I said, whoa, we're coming with, wait, what's going on? And then lo and behold, the phone rings. Federico picks it, and I can see him as he picks up the phone, he starts staggering, and he's repeating what he's hearing. Yes, she's the one. Yes, the next part of the journey is to begin. And then he kind of staggers and hangs up, and he says, the voices have confirmed. And I said, okay, now you got to tell me what's going on. And then he says, we're here in Los Angeles. I want to do a project on Carlos Castaneda. I have been contacting him back and forth. We've been trying to meet. We met years ago in Rome for a brief moment. I have an idea to do a movie on his books, on Castaneda. I'm not sure. I'm feeling this, but I want to meet him. I want to see what's going on. But the minute that I started planning to meet Carlos, the phone starts ringing, this strange voice that's reading my mind and telling me what to do. And I don't like it at all, he says. But it's too freaky and too strange. And so they last night said, that someone from my entourage must have a dancer, knows a dancer, have their dancer come, but must not come alone and bring a woman, a female. And of course, Sybil is a dancer. She wanted to have dinner with Mr. Fellini, terribly so. I mean, who wouldn't? But the requirements were you must not come alone. You must bring a woman. There was no age requirement. There was other than a female being, and it was me. And now the voices are telling Federico Fellini that I'm at the moment the chosen one for this next voyage. So, of course, I said, well, I've read all of Castaneda's books. Oh, I love Castaneda. This is amazing. This is now, and I kept thinking, this voice. I didn't quite understand what this voice was, and so as we discussed, and now I'm going back to my home, my apartment, to pack and get ready because I was definitely up for going to meet Castaneda. And when I get back, Federico calls and says, I'm having problems. We promised someone else, so Sybil, to come on the trip, and everybody's fighting, so I'm sorry. When we come back in a few days, we'll meet up again. So I was like, oh, all right, that's a bummer. Wow, that was strange. Then my phone rings again, and it's the voices. And now I'm hearing them. A metallic voice. I felt like I was in a walkie-talkie. And as I'm holding the phone, I began trembling, shaking, sweating. I mean, I felt something like I've never felt before with this connection. In a strange metallic voice, they said, you have to go. You have to find a way. You must be there. So that's when I said, all right, I'm going to drive to Tulum. And I loaded my car and I drove. I knew they were flying the next day. I got a head start on the road and just drove nonstop. Stopped in the car, stopped for gas, drank bottled water or whatever I could find at a gas station, and went there. Because I had been there several years before, I had some acclimation of where some of the hotels were because I enjoyed going there to my photo shoots. Lo and behold, I reconnect with them. Now everybody's impressed, like, wait a minute, how did you get here? And then we continue to do this goose chase, trying to get Castaneda. When we finally meet up with him, do this tour through the jungle, we tell him about these voices. We tell him, why is he doing this? Federico was sure it was Castaneda playing a prank. And he turned white as a ghost, and he says, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not doing anything. And he literally disappears, never to be seen again. So, of course, they're flying back. I drive back. And then within 3 days, we meet again in Los Angeles because the voices had not stopped calling. And they said that they had nothing to do with Carlos Castaneda. That was not who we were to follow, that they were something much different, and that they had an assignment, a message, and a project they wanted Federico to do. And we assumed it was a movie because, greatest director, and ideas for a movie. And then the voices gave us all, instead of names, they gave us colors. Federico was the green one, Andrea De Carlo was the blue one, Maurizio Grimaldi was the yellow one, I was the pink one. Tullio Pinelli was the violet one. Filippo was the white one. And so we were all given these colors. And we were all told to buy musical instruments, which we did. And then we were told to meet up in the hotel room at midnight, and we would be receiving some information. Of course, we're in the room making all kinds of noises on our guitars and synthesizers that we bought, and lo and behold, we're just making a ruckus, and it was almost too funny. But I kept saying to the group, I don't think it's about us really playing a song or making a sound. I think what they're trying to say is that the sounds on the instrument and us being colors, that if we only learn, see, I think we were very primitive said that we should call them you. I don't know if it was the letter U or Y-O-U, but you. And so I thought, oh, yeah, very much like when you say thank you, bless you. I felt that the you was important because when they contact us, they needed us for that energy because it was very draining to receive any connection with them. And they used the telephone. So I just thought it's, once again, back to the music night. I thought this is not working, but we're not getting the picture. We're actually trying to make something when it's much simpler. We should have been learning what each, like the color blue, what note is that? The color pink, the color green. I think if we would have done that, we would have actually maybe had some success. But we were all giddy and, exhausted from the journey. And at the end of the day, we're still confused. And I think I was the one who was trying to find always the metaphysical angle to it. And then, lo and behold, those phone calls from the voices, as soon as I get back home, they're calling. They're calling 3-4 times a day, particularly me, and telling me what to do and what not to be afraid of. And I just listened because I was so in awe and shock, and also that vibrational sensation I had. And I truly thought, these guys must be from outer space because that's how they talk. They never came across that they were in this physical presence. And by the way, they would read my mind. That was, to me, why I thought this can't be custodiated, because I would be in my room by myself thinking something, and they would call and answer my thoughts. And this went on, by the way, for the rest of the year, and Fellini, of course, returned back to Rome, and we are now calling each other regularly, because the voices are calling to tell me to tell him this, and for him to do that. And then I just said, I'm coming to Rome, because that's what they wanted. The voices wanted me to be near him. For some reason, they used me, between Federico and myself and Tullio, we got the most phone calls, and were given the most information. And of course, Andrea and Maurizio, they all thought that this was all Carlos Castaneda. And other people to this day thought it was Castaneda on some level, tricking us, being tricksters. And it could have been, but that would make Carlos Castaneda far too powerful, because what the voices were showing me was truly unexplainable. I mean, they would tell me not to do something, and in that moment, that object would disappear right in front of my eyes, or things would move across the room, and I did not think Castaneda. And they, the voices themselves, said, forget Castaneda. We have nothing to do with him. So Federico is terrified. He's frightened, but my presence is a solace to him and comforting. And of course, then I now begin a life in Rome. We work on several projects together. Finally, he does his last film, The Voice of the Moon, which he interjects his interpretation. But before the film comes out, he does, with Milo Manata, several, to satisfy, because the voices did not go away just because he went back to Rome. They were insisting he tell his story. So in the Corriere della Sera, every day, front page of the largest newspaper, the whole page newspaper was taken up, giving snippets of this journey. And it lasted for six series of different parts of the story. And it became such a cult success that then Milo said, let me do in another magazine called Colter Maltese. Colter Maltese is a graphic magazine that does, all different kinds of graphic novel artists and tells their stories and whatnot. So, because Milo is so highly regarded, he got, it's again, sectional series, again, the story more being fleshed out with illustrations from Milo Manata in Colter Maltese. This Fellini story further devolved, not just, this brief white brush strokes that he did in the Corriere della Sera. And again, the cult is even building. People who are fans of Colter Maltese, they're buying the magazines, and everyone wants more and more. to the final conclusion, he does a graphic novel with it all together, and it's beautifully done. The artistry is beautiful. Of course, he has me running around naked the whole time. But that's Fellini, so okay, what can I say? And in this graphic novel, he says this is a true story. So he thought that, finish that, the graphic novel is out, and this goes on from, okay, so the story happened in 84. We start doing the graphic novel in 86, and then by 1988, he does his last film, The Voice of the Moon. And by the way, I'm there throughout. And Federico, I was like his token sidekick, because he'd go out and he'd always take me along with him. And such a blessing and an honor. And of course, the voices never stopped. And they kept trying to prove to him that they were powerful. And the more they tried to prove it, and using myself, the more that he became very weary and afraid of it. For example, at one time, I still flew back and forth from LA until I really got situated, because I still had to organize my life, close all my apartment down in Los Angeles, sell my car and such, that the voices called and they said, we told the green one not to go to this place. And we warned him. And you tell him, call him now and tell him we warned him. And they hung up or disconnected. And I picked up the phone, I dialed Rome, and there's no ring. All of a sudden, I hear a voice breathing very heavily. So I go, Federico? And he said, Christina? What are you doing on the phone? I said, well, the voices just told me to tell you that they warned you. And he starts crying. He said, I just fell down the stairs and I'm picking up the receiver to call the ambulance, and it's you in this moment telling me, and come back. You must come back. This is too scary for me. So that's why I kept going back, because it was almost as if every time I was away from him, he felt more threatened. So I felt like I was a little protecting angel. And of course, he loved that I did tarot and astrology and I Ching and ruins. So, wherever I was, pull out the cards, do that. And he was so generous to show me off to all the public and the people of Italy. And I did all the television shows. So it was a huge success in some way. But, I had to be very careful how far I told the story, because I'm already sounding like a space cadet. And that's just, as I said, an example. But in one of the times that I'm always taking directions from the voice, and they told me that we can call them. It was them. It was a collective energy. It wasn't one, and they referred to themselves as a we, a collective we, but they wanted us to call them you. And at one point they said to me, you can ask a question. Now, up until that point, I never asked a question. I just listened and did whatever they told me to do. But I was kind of thrown aback. Oh, I could say something. Oh my God, my brain's thinking, do I ask about Jesus? What do I ask? And I just said, is there reincarnation? He said, yes, there is reincarnation. Most of us reincarnate hundreds of times. And in fact, you have reincarnated hundreds of times, and you are one of us, Christina. Oh, people. You are one of us. So we'll always be there with you and for you. And then they hung up. So I was like, what do I do with that information? Okay. Well, that doesn't surprise me. The way I didn't think I was from this galaxy, nor towards Palladium. That was, the dog star and the binary star system. I always felt attracted in that direction. So, but that was the kind of information I was getting. Another time, they said to me that I should go to Rome, well, they didn't say Rome. They called and they said, we want you, and it was like in a few days from now, it was like 10 days, we want you on this date to stand in front of Cafe Greco at midnight. And they hung up. So Cafe Greco, the only Cafe Greco is in Rome, so okay, I guess I got to fly back to Rome, because I was flying back and forth, and right after I first met that October of '84. Was flying most of the first 3 to 4 months of '85. I flew back 7 times. And I was running out of money. I wasn't working, and so here I'm supposed to fly back midnight at Cafe Greco. I'm thinking, what the? So out loud, I said, "How do you think I'm supposed to go and get the money?" And I'm just talking to myself in my apartment by myself. And no sooner do I say, "How do you think I'm supposed to get the money? And where am I going to pay for this?" My doorbell rings. Now, you can't get to my doorbell because there's a security gate. So I open my door, and I look, and there's nobody. So I wonder how that somebody rang my doorbell, but I look down, there's a shoebox. I open the shoebox, there's $1,500 of cash. What? Well, of course, that's my money to fly a round trip to go back to Rome.
That is insane.
This is the kind of stuff this was going on nonstop. This was, and I was getting 3, 4 phone calls a day. I'm surprised I have some sanity left. But I think that apart from what they told me, if I believe, if I'm with one of them or not, at my human logic, I just said, okay, I have a big spirituality, I have a big curiosity, I have a big metaphysical studies. I know I'm in a situation that is one of a lifetime, and they probably picked me because I'm the most open to it. I didn't resist. It was scary, but I didn't resist. So of course, now I fly back, and now I'm standing, and I wore a black trench coat, and it's midnight, and I'm standing on the street right in front of Cafe Greco, and all the shutters are shut, and the streets on Rome there was not a soul. It was the quietest night. And I felt like, oh my God, I'm like a call girl on the standing streets. I just felt so strange to be there. So I kind of arched my back into the niche of the doorway to not be like police or anybody would come down. What am I doing standing there? But anyway, I'm sitting there, and it's exactly midnight. And I look, and I see someone turn the corner and walk towards me about 4 blocks away. They can't see me, but I see, the human coming closer, closer, closer. Their head was down, their hands were in their pocket. They were kind of just walking towards me. And I look, and I realize it's Andrea, the blue one. So as it gets closer, I now step forward, and it's now a familiar face. And I go, Andrea, what are you doing here? Christina, what are you doing here? The voices told me to come. Because I didn't know what, but there you are. I said, oh my God. He goes, no, this can't be. You followed me. I said, no, I didn't follow. What are you talking about? He goes, nobody knows that I'm in Rome. I forgot where I parked my car. I've been combing the streets, trying to remember where I parked my car, and I was coming up here. So this was, again, these impossible scenarios that these voices were creating for us. So I said, well, you obviously can't drive back to Milano. Stay in my hotel. We have to talk about this. Apparently they wanted you and me, the blue one, the writer, and me, the muse, to talk. And of course, every time we went to the bathroom, the voices would call, and they say, stop talking too much. Be simpler. You're not convincing him. So then they'd come out of the bathroom. They said, the voices just called. No, they didn't. Yes, they did, because he was the doubting Thomas of the truth. And lo and behold, the next day drives back, and I was just exhausted. He just thought he didn't know what to believe of me, but it was so unusual. But this is just a sample of the constant barragement of connecting and connections that they insisted upon me, and I never quite understood what they really wanted, other than to support Federico in whatever project he's going to make, and to be the receptive one, to get some kind of understanding, because this is what I had to either be a voice in the story or an inspiration of or an interpreter. As like when I do readings, I'm interpreting the metaphysical mathematics of the sacred geometry, all the things that are in the arts, so the metaphysical arts that I must translate, which is what I do when I do readings. So shortly after, while I'm in Rome, I am taking a nap, and I'm awoken from the nap, but I can't move and I can't open my eyes. But I see I'm surrounded by this alien face, this face shifting with big eyes. It was like, when you look at mercury or an oil spill on the wet streets, it kind of shifts blue and green and kind of like silvery blending, and that's what their faces were. And I was so terrified. They let me see them, and I could see them look into my soul, and they waited for me to calm down before I could actually open my eyes again. And I was like, oh my God, they're so scary looking for my humanness. And other times I would see like colored energy, in corners, and I always took that they're there because I'm getting this sensation. And several times I'd be sleeping and I could feel them pushing down on me, and those were so scary. So it was a very poltergeisty feeling. And of course, this is now, by the way, from 1984, upon first hearing, till 1988, my last phone call, but I didn't leave Federico's side until he passed. So this is a 9-year, talk about a, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds experience. But it opened up so many ideas in my mind that, or I should say reconfirmed that we are not alone. And of course, Federico struggled with it enormously. He didn't want to believe it. He just thought it was someone joking on him. But I just will not believe that this could have been Castaneda or his tricksters. Even though, could Don Juan or anyone be that powerful? I don't know. But that is, I'm just giving you it in a nutshell before you ask questions or such. But as you can see, when Federico passed and I returned back to America, I knew that I could not leave this planet Earth without telling this story. And I knew I'd write a book. I tried with the graphic novel for the first several years I was here. I went to every major studio from Disney on down to show them the graphic novel, to show them the script that I put together. And, this is lovely. Can I keep the graphic novel? Thank you. But this is too weird. And anyway, animation is for kids. And at that time, I was thinking 3D backgrounds, 2D characters, because they had not really perfected 3D characters in 1992, 93. It was very stiff looking, but I thought it didn't matter, And then I met with Ralph Bakshi from Cool World, who mixed real life and animation, and he said, if my movie's a big success, I'll visit yours. And of course his wasn't, so, finito that story. And it went on that pretty much everyone knew in town that I had this project, because they all wanted to meet me. They all wanted to hear my story. They all probably thought I was nuts. And nobody took up. Only Marty Scorsese was probably the one I was hoping the most, who met with me several times. But he wasn't going to do it either. And I just felt like I was beating a dead horse until I wrote my book. Because as I said, I don't know if anyone's going to make a movie or the movie, even though there are now many attempts now, for such a movie that I would think like a Tim Burton or Scorsese or Jim Jarmusch or David Lynch, somebody who could see, take that, go on that ride. And it still might happen, one never knows, but that the writing of the book, the graphic novel, I also put the last film that I worked behind the scenes that Fellini did. I filmed that, and I put that on YouTube just so that everyone can look at it. So if you're on YouTube, just search Towards the Moon with Fellini, Towards the Moon with Christina Engelhardt, and please enjoy the mockumentary, because it's a film within a film, and we're trying to search for an answer of the voice behind the moon and capture the moon. So, ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to let you know if there's any questions about
Wow.
over myself. But one last thing before, just to kind of encapsulate at the Times near the end after, I guess in 1989, 90. I'm in Rome. Federico calls me to his office. You know, I see him 2 or 3 times a week, or we talk every day. But this time he said, I have some people in my office. You have to come right now. Come immediately. Well, okay. So I dropped everything, and I get to his office. And as I walk in, and there's a group of people there. There's 6 people, 3 men, 3 women, and they're all dressed in impeccable suits. They're dressed impeccably. You know, women are in business suits, men. They all look like lawyers and doctors. And I sit down next to Federico, and the man introduces that this group are the new seers, that they don't want Castaneda to take over they want that Federico and I become the new seers. Federico takes Carlo's place, and I take Carol's place, and that we become the new seekers, the new seers, and the new Naguas, and go to Mexico and finish the cult that Carlos started. And we're like, no, thank you, no, thank you. And they were really insistent, and we're like, no. And basically, we have to just pack up and disappear. Nobody would know where we are. And I did not think that was great. Certainly Federico. But thereafter, when I left that office that day, thinking, how strange is that? That 6 people for the next 2-3 months I thought they were trying to kidnap me. They would just randomly jump out of the bushes or show up at the supermarket. They were following me in many different ways. And that was strange until I just said, I'm not going with you. Forget it. And I eventually didn't leave the house. I was truly afraid to be kidnapped. And never to hear from them again. So that in a nutshell, obviously there's so many jewels that are in the book. But you can see with a story like that, you couldn't just forget about it.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Well, one thing that is striking about your story, and you know, it really hits home even more hearing it straight from you, is your and everyone's kind of willingness to hear these voices and just go along with what they're doing, to what they're telling you to do, and like you're just compelled to unquestionably follow what they're saying. Like what?
Well,
I'm pretty sure
Federico was because he was searching for the movie, and he created an entourage. And if he told the entourage to do it, they did it. And from his entourage, the entourage was not getting the calls. It was Federico, then his writer Tullio, and it was myself. Okay. And once you hear these voices, you're so awestruck. I was the one. Federico went because he thought it was a project. Then once he went back to Rome, he was, and he finished the graphic novel. He thought, I'm done with this story. But they were hounding me. And I felt that I couldn't just walk away and go back to normal, to my Los Angeles life. I wanted this life in Rome. And Federico was such a magical person, and he was so delightful, and I made a career in Rome. So it was truly myself that made the biggest upheaval. So between Federico and myself, yes, to your remark about really being the most open to follow him, but there were more people reluctant of our group than willing.
What happened with the reluctant people? Did they still keep getting calls?
Oh, they thought it was Castaneda, like Andrea and Maurizio. They thought it was Castaneda. So they thought that I was just. They didn't know what to make of me. Andrea wrote a book called Yucatan, but he characterized us all. And my name in his book is Ricky, and he made me a car salesman. I mean, I don't know why he felt that he had to tell it like if it was like a made-up story, without giving anyone's real names or personalities. But Federico knew it was him, and he was very upset. And they ended their friendship over that book. Maurizio was upset because he spent so much money to do all these travels and trips, and no movie came about it. And his father Alberto Grimaldi, who entrusted his son to get this movie off the ground with Fellini, didn't. So he was just thinking we're all a bunch of wackadoodles. And Sybil was out of the picture, and Tullio was probably the only one, since he heard it, who thought there was something. But he didn't have to go anywhere. It was really me who went out on a limb and, gave up my life. Federico made a trip. I transformed my life.
Wow.
How could I not? I couldn't just bounce back to normal and pretend it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And that was Geri DeMarlo. She said, you're going to live in Rome. And I lived and I loved Rome. And I became Italian citizen. I speak the language fluently. And it was magical. It was a magical time of my life.
I think one thing we can all agree with listening is that Italian names are awesome.
Yeah, Italians are...
That's for sure.
Well, just the names, just as you're saying them, like, I think that the fact that there's, like, the Italian names in this story are just make it even better.
Yes, and of course that's where I met Eugenio, and who was an assistant to Federico, and we had a love story in this crazy story, and to this day we are the best of friends. He just finished in 2019 Fellini Finemai, which has not been released, and Fellini Finemai means never ending, like you could say Fellini forever. And the film is wonderful. Well, again, just kind of retracing Federico as a great artist and his projects and his film, and of course, in this Fellini Finemai, of course, then there I am saying, okay, now if you're going to talk about Fellini's life and stories, this is one story not to forget. Probably, he had, Diaro di Mastorna, that was an unfinished project, and this one. These were his unfinished projects. And maybe one day a big Fellini fan or an artist who will pay respect will tell those unfinished stories. I thought that I would. But Hollywood is very tough. Hollywood's very tough. I pitched this story so much. I gave every penny I had to try to get intellectual properties off the ground. And you can't give up in this business. I mean, that's why I never think that it's ever gone or dead or died, but that it is timing. Just like our timing, that you brought me down into your bunker. I couldn't be more honored to meet esoteric people.
Yeah,
and by the way, I do continuous readings. My gift has not dried up or stopped. If not, I do large amounts of people. I even hired an agent so that I can do big events. And, I usually do between Halloween and New Year's Eve up to 1,000 people regularly.
Damn.
I just love it. I just have that gift. There's something that when I go into that frame of mind where I'm not about me, I'm just in that receptivity of connection and truly looking at sacred geometry with the symbols of cards, tarot, and numerology, does patterns. And if I see it in my mind's eye, I must say it because that's when the magic happens.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so, like, all this time has passed. All these things happen to you and to others. What do you think these voices were? Where are they coming from, and what did they want? I know they told Federico that they wanted him to do what he was meant to do, but like, did he ever really figure that out? And
well,
you know what I mean?
Federico had an enormous aptitude and hunger for the metaphysics and spirituality, from Juliet to the spirits, from his own psychedelic trips with taking LSD and mushrooms. So he was a far out, way ahead of his time kind of a director in the first place. So he himself was open to it, but he was also someone who, again, liked to be the puppet master, and he didn't like anyone telling him what to do. But in his great talent, he was extremely sensitive to taking like church and the Catholic and all the symbolisms that he does in his films, and to kind of give it another perspective, see outside the box. So he is a great inspiration to artists in many ways, and he's a visionary. So that his path was, I guess, that open, that he could have conjured something, and I don't mean conjured like a negative spirit, and the only way I can describe who and what you is, because I don't see them as a word, because they told this to Tullio, because Tullio right away, in his lack of fear of them or something, said, what are you guys? What is this? What is going on here? And they said, we've never been born, we've never died, we're an energy outside. And for us to make a voice, for us to speak using these, the telephone, it takes enormous amounts of energy. It's almost as if an entire group of energy has to come together to make this phone call, and it's a collective mind that passes the message through. So my gut feels as if they are interdimensional. If they're not, because remember, they made things move. They could get into my mind. They made things reappear and disappear. They were outside of time, because they knew 2 weeks before Andrea was going to walk down the Via Candodi. They knew 2 weeks before. They knew that moment, that at the timing of me calling Federico as he fell down the stairs, etc. And there's so many more little jewels. So to me, they were outside of time. So that's the fourth dimension. And they could do, that was that dimension. So as I started really paying attention, I felt that they were dimensional beings. If they've never lived or died, they're not on the human flesh. They don't have eyes, ears, nose. And yet what they appeared to me, it was a shape-shifting, humanistic, like with a head and shoulders, but, I didn't see a real body. I just saw like this cloaking, shape-shifting energy. So I felt that is where they are. And so if you, ladies and gentlemen, in your own esoteric hunger, I know that there is more than 3 dimensions. We know time, we know there's so much microwave, macrowave. These are things we cannot see. Just how our even cell phones are working is, a miracle. How magnetic energy works. There's things that we don't know. We didn't invent. We discovered. We happenstance upon it. So I'm still believing that they are, hopefully, if they've never born or died, they are still wherever they are. And I felt in writing this book, it was my way of bringing the colors back together. Obviously Tullio's no longer with us, and Federico's no longer with us, whomever is, but sometimes it does take someone to show a light upon that maybe there is a greater research to happen. When I saw Interstellar, and there's a couple of movies that I've watched that other great directors were thinking, trying to tell stories from the 4th and 5th dimension, I thought, oh, we're getting closer. The artistic mind is getting closer to tapping into what this could be. So it's not so, and therefore, if it's dimensional, we don't need a spaceship to come from Pleiades to the United States of America or wherever. If you're interdimensional, that might be where the black hole exists. This is all that I don't know, but it has me so curious to meet like-minded people who are themselves saying, what could this be? And what did Carlos Castaneda tap into? He himself had no magic, but maybe Don Juan and the Toltecs, speaking of the Nagua and the Tonal and all that was truly magic at that time, because there is magic. Centuries before us, there's been tribes of people who were able to feel the nature. And, you know, if you're into alchemy, and if you're able to blend things and do remote viewing, you know, we're so much in the kindergarten of spirituality as humans. I'm just trying to get into some kind of first grade.
Yeah. Yeah.
And tell me, and in your regards, what are some of your metaphysical understandings? Because I do think it takes an understanding to be open to phenomena.
Yeah. I began investigating the paranormal in an official capacity after moving into a very active house, actually with TJ, who's here also, and he, you know, I don't think was there as much as I was, didn't experience as much as I did, but you know, that sort of sent me down this path. Like, I need to investigate this, like, officially, and figure out what's going on. So I joined a group. That's where I met Beth, and Beth came into the group as a from the psychic medium angle. I came into the group from like the official, like a tech angle. I'm gonna set up equipment. I'm gonna, like, you know, record EVPs. I'm gonna catch something on camera. You know, use equipment and prove or disprove this. Blah blah blah. Whatever. So that's how I came at it. And then I started investigating with Beth, who was a medium and really wasn't interested in any of the equipment. Actually, like, she would just walk in and she would honestly be experiencing stuff in the space, like on the drive over there. She'd already be like writing stuff down. And so she's the one that would interpret stuff like I was experiencing. I'd walk into a room and all of a sudden I'd be like, well, I feel like dizzy all of a sudden. What the hell's my problem? And she's like, oh yeah, you feel that too? Yeah, the spirit just walked by. Or something, you know, and would describe it and all the stuff. And then lo and behold, we'd go back later and I would replay or my recorder, and like there was voices of a person that matches the exact description of this person she was talking about. So,
wow. Yep.
So she like brought me along to the more psychic angle of things. Well, I went into it. I thought originally that was all bullshit, to be totally honest. She made a believer out of me just because she like would talk about stuff and describe a woman, and then like later on I would play a recorder back and there's a woman's voice like answering us that we didn't hear, you know, with our ears. and then I look into the historical records of the building, and like, oh, there's that woman by the exact name, the exact time period, like that blew my mind. And so, yeah.
Now, this is interesting because exactly with what you're saying. So, you know, and working, for example, on the, if you want to say ghost realm, meaning that once living beings who are trapped in a dimension. Because where are they? You know, they made the painting move across the floor, or the floors creak, or the voices. So, see, this is where I think this fourth or fifth or some dimension that a once living is now kind of stuck there for whatever reason. You know, talk about energy, because it's all energy. And so here, what I was dealing with, they were not born on this earth, but they can move through that kind of dimension where phenomena can happen.
Oh yeah, I think Christina, what you experienced is way beyond just talking to the dead, talking to spirits. You are, you know, the people that are communicating with you, you know, by the telephone, they're definitely from, like you said, a different dimension, coming through the wormhole. How they did to contact you is definitely not spirit of loved ones who have crossed over. It's more along, listen to you talk, it's more along like, you know, the UFOs in another different dimension, higher than the spirit realm.
But now, mind you, because I've had a life of esoteric readings, since I've been reading since I'm a child, I've had many ghosts appearing to me, I've had many phenomena, like I always felt the energy of maybe something watching, but ghosts liked me a lot. I've seen so many of them that I thought that I must be a magnet to it. But then I'd also delve into the psychic phenomena, and just so often, and just, you know, doing readings for people, and then I'll say, oh, I have to tell you something. I don't know why I have to tell you this. There's a message, and my ears will start ringing, or I'll start feeling something, and people will start crying, and oh my God, and so forth. So I just feel that it's like you're a gymnast, you know, you run the track or you swim, or, you know, I do the different, I'm in the sport of being open and receptive like yourself. But apparently that I had been that far open that that I was pulled into this energy.
Yeah.
Here's another delightful story. So at one point I went into hiding. I was going back and forth, and I didn't want the voices to know where I was. So I told no one. I didn't ask for the money, got my own, plane ticket. I didn't tell anyone, Federico, no one that I was coming. I flew in. I changed hotels several times. Then when I finally took this old hotel with a switchboard, I changed rooms several times. So I'm thinking, great, nobody followed me. Nobody knows where I am. As soon as the door closed from the doorman dropping me off, the phone rings, and it's them.
Oh my God.
And they were telling me what to do.
Mm.
I hung up the phone, because I saw a switchboard. Aha! So I called down at the operator, and I said, I just got off the phone with a call. Can you tell me if this call came from within the hotel, meaning I was followed, or it was a connection from an outside line? And the operator said, I never connected your room to anybody.
Oh, for God's sake.
Oh, jeez.
Oh.
Wow.
So and that's why I'm like, I'm so surprised. I have a job. I'm normal. I'm healthy. I can't pretend that didn't happen.
Right.
This is that kind of stuff.
You can't explain it. Some things I think we're not supposed to know.
But I do believe that I'm not alone. That there are other people who have an understanding, like yourselves, who pick up the spiritual, who pick up the phenomena, who might have had. Now I've been in Parasol, and I've been to some of the cliques where the people meet with alien, contacts. So I have a bunch of people who have me speak in front of them, and they're all, the spaceship came to get them and did this, and I said, well, I didn't have a spaceship, but I was, I was taken. I was taken, but I didn't feel or see a spaceship. I was taken, I was maybe brought and leaned into a dimension so I could feel what it is to be almost out of body. So I feel I was there. And every so often, and I don't know if it's just my own meditation or my own just, I like to sometimes meditate that I'm up in this stratosphere and I'm kind of floating around looking down on Earth, just hanging out, looking at Earth and space and sky. And I'm not alone. I'm not alone. There's a lot of other surfers up there, doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So there are like-minded people who need to get their minds off the Earth, because the Earth is scary. The scariest place is right here on Earth.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Right now, the negativity is just, I'm just dumbstruck.
Yeah.
Where you almost want to get on a spaceship and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
We're killing this planet, and
That's for sure.
so and I'm looking for my spiritual family. I have my mother and father and family, but I'm isolated in my spiritual understanding. I haven't met anyone. I mean, like yourselves. This is why I love meeting with people who are open.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking for that spiritual family. Because I don't want to be an only child.
Yeah, you need.
I want a family who people who can talk about these things.
You need it. You do.
Very much so.
Absolutely.
Very much so.
And it's interesting that you touched upon just now, like this feeling that you may have been taken somewhere, but not necessarily on like a ship or whatever. But I seem to be hearing more and more reports over the years as time goes by. I keep hearing more and more often these, like in Whitley Strieber's case, for example, there is the sense in him, the subjective sense that he was taken somewhere, and that the obvious sort of association you make right away with being taken somewhere, you assume alien, spaceship, whatever. But there seems to be, the more reports I hear, the more there seems to be this is taking place on a psychic level, and the people that are being quote unquote taken aren't necessarily physically going anywhere, but this is like a psychic journey or astral projection, or they're being taken, they're going somewhere, but not necessarily physically, because other people are there and they witness them. They saw, no, you were sleeping in your bed all night, but they'll swear up and down of this immensely vivid thing. They may have bruises afterwards and marks on their skin. Some evidence that something happened, but they didn't really physically go anywhere. This kind of happened on another level.
And it's funny you mentioned Whitney, because when I first came back to the United States, and I was walking down the street, and I turned the corner, and there was Whitney's book, Communion. And I looked at the gray, and the cover of the book with the black eyes and the gray, and I jumped back because those were the eyes looking at me. But it wasn't a gray being because it was more shifting, but it was those big reflective eyes that looked into me. So I bought the book, and as I'm reading it, every time he gives a date that he received contact was exactly when I was receiving.
Well, get out.
Every date, in my book, every letter that Federico wrote, every time that I had a connection was when Whitney had in his book. So I started thinking, our Earth, that's what I thought. That's why I thought it was before they told me that they were, before I learned that they were neither born nor such. I thought they were aliens. I mean, because, before I got more information, I thought for sure that, like the harmonic convergence, there was, at that time in 1984, 1984 was a psychic loaded year. I mean, we were doing just before Hands Across America or the world, but the harmonic conversion really catapulted. There were a few opportunities to start the conversion, but 84 really blasted it. And then there was another one in 87, but in that whole time period, the psychic phenomena shot through the roof, where people, besides myself, besides Whitney, there was just a lot of people speaking of phenomena.
That's
at the highest level.
That's true.
So I just thought that there was almost like, if you want to use the word wormhole, that there was something that was opening up to slide into our reality.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, actually, do you think that this phenomenon was just always happening, but then at that point, for some reason or perception, society-wide shifted and then began to notice it? Or do you think the activity itself kicked up at that point?
Yeah, I'm just going to say that there was, and it's happened throughout time, from the Egyptian times, from the Mesopotamians, from, Lemurian, Atlantean. They were shifts of time here on Earth that was in some kind of alignment. Even the Star of Bethlehem, whenever that was, I mean, the exact date of when Jesus could have been born or such. There was alignment for metaphysical phenomena to directly connect. Even Joan of Arc receiving her, there was just, throughout history, it's not one occasion too. We have hundreds of opportunities like this. And I almost feel as if there is some kind of alignment. And it happens, it's not just generational, but and then we'll have, warning signs. We'll have great warnings, please, take care of this planet. It's always been a great warning for our world. We have had warning signs that we are, from Revelations to Nostradamus to look at the world right now. I mean, I don't know when are we going to start heeding the warning. And those of us who get an inner sensation, an inner feeling, or get brought into an opening to the dimensions, because the dimensions are there, but it's the alignment for that tapping into. Just like when Beth, when you do a reading, or when any of us are in that space, where it's like you don't know why you're saying what you're saying, but it's just coming out of your mouth.
Right.
And that's when you're on.
Yeah.
When you think too much, you're off. It's like, I don't know where this is coming from. And usually that's when you're so accurate, because that's a connection.
Yeah.
Because our brains are all electromagnetic field. And I think that if we remember the magnetic electro field, we'll still hold on to it. And I'm telling you, the 5G and a lot of the stuff that's going on in the world, I think it's shaking it up. I think it's ruining some of the electromagnetic force that was once organic.
Your phone, yeah.
But yeah, that's that's a lot of radiation in the atmosphere, and we don't really know what the effects of that are going to be until a few years go by, and then it's like, oh, it caused the arms to fall off.
I do hope some great storyteller comes to us and says, and let's add to your story.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we were like talking just ourselves before you called, Christina, and we're talking about Castaneda himself, and you touched upon this earlier, and I just wanted to go back to it because we felt growing up reading these books. I'm curious to get your take on how those books affected you, but we felt that just reading those books just kind of shifted your consciousness to a point, just enough to that you began to notice things, and strange things would either begin to happen or you would notice them more.
Yeah, I'm curious too, like your experience of him, because that's the thing I've been wrestling with lately, because there's a lot of shadiness on that, on that story too. And and before, I listened to the Trickster. I think he was just kind of on this pedestal for me as this enlightened being who had all these answers, and and like all the great gurus, he's a human, flaws and things. So I was curious. How long did you guys actually have interaction with him, and like what was your take on him?
Oh my God, 15 minutes, half an hour. Federico was very mad. He wanted him to stop making this crazy phenomenon, this crazy goose chase. He goes, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't make any calls. And when there was something that Federico had, a piece of paper, and of course I only saw it once, and I never saw it again because he took it with him. It was a piece of paper with a mark inside it. It was the strangest thing that he found. It was slipped under his door when he first got to the hotel to make this project. It looked like a handprint inside a piece of paper. I mean, there was, I don't know how it could have been physically done. It was sort of like a holograph inside of just a piece of paper. Very strange. He showed that to him and kind of spooked him. And then another thing I told you in the book and in the graphic novel, Federico is met up at the airport, and a guy comes up to him and gives him an envelope, and then he kind of snaps out of it. And he goes, where am I? What am I doing? And we're in Los Angeles. And he goes, how did it get you? So he was at the airport. He didn't even know. It's like he came out of a trance. And he left, but he left Federico this envelope, and when he opened it up, it was a little piece of fabric the size of a stamp. Federico says, what the hell is this? And Andrea says, that's the same pattern of your hat. Federico takes off his hat. The inner side of the hat brim had been cut out. It fit exactly. Federico said, I never take this. This hat is never out of my sight. So, it's just... So, that's why this is so weird, and he thought, again, this was all when he was thinking it was Castaneda behind it. Now, this I will say, Castaneda to us was an interpreter. He was a student of Don Juan and Don Gennaro, that they were the ones who could pull the strings. And they let him look in like an observer and train and teach him like an apprentice would. But he was never receiving masterness, but he was sort of a participant, an observer, and usually under the influence of mushrooms could he go that place in his mind. And that's how I always interpreted Castaneda. So when I first came a member, I'm already a metaphysical child. So I first picked up his book, I was 12, 13, and I've been closer to 13, but I read it and I was like, oh my God. His interpretation of looking like being that apprentice to this sorcery, I just was fascinated. And I was like, oh my, when's the next book coming out? And and everyone I met with at that time in the 70s, they were like, this Castaneda guy, he's so special because he had a window, he got a perspective into these Yaqui Indians, the Toltecs, their secrets, and the Mayans, and just alone to meet Don Gennaro and Don Juan, that he was chosen. They played games on him to show him how we ridiculous, certain things of human. So he was truly like a journalist, seeing the story and writing about it, but still on the outside of it. But probably the closest to the interpreting of this. And that one day, Don Juan and Don Gennaro cross over, never to be seen again. And so he writes a few more books. He's on a roll, Don Juan. Carlos is on a roll, making a fortune too. And a lot of people were calling him, the people who really knew him, they knew he was a trickster and a manipulator and, had this harem of women, and they were all, keeping him tripped out. And he was not a nice guy. And not a spirit. If you met him, you're like, this guy? He's like arrogant, overweight, he was the antithesis of what you would think would be like the Mother Teresa of esoteric nature, But he could write. He could tell a story. You have to give him credit for that, if it was making it up or not. He knew how to really catapult you into altered states.
Yeah,
he was a genius for that. Mm-hmm. I don't take that away from him. If it was true or not, people have made fun of me and said I'm a knucklehead, that what was I on when I was having that experience? I'm not trying to convince anyone. I'm not making money on it. But for all that I'm, upset with Castaneda, he's still, in the 70s, for me, he was the best storyteller.
That's the thing we keep coming back to, too, is like no matter what, is behind it or whatever, like the stories, the books were written in such a way that put you in these altered states, like we experienced it,
And nobody else was, and the way of the peaceful war, they all followed, as, being a young apprentice to, he definitely opened the minds of many people, and I applaud him for that.
Yeah,
does anyone read the book, The Apprentice, from Amy Wallace?
I've not read that. No.
Amy Wallace, now unfortunately she's passed. As soon as she wrote her book, she died short. That was one of the things when I knew about Amy Wallace. I thought I was going to write my book and something was bad going to happen to me. I didn't believe it. I went ahead with it. But Amy, she was one of Castaneda's followers. She really was a big follower. She knew him. She did drugs with him. She had a relationship with him. She was in his entourage. And he just messed with her mind so bad. You can Google her. Her book is called The Apprentice by Amy Wallace. Died young. Died at 58 years old of some strange cancer. Just so bizarre. And she writes, and lo and behold, as I buy her book, I'm turning to a page, and there she talks about she's with Carlos, and in walks Federico Fellini with his German-American blonde lady with the frog ring, and I still have the frog ring. And I'm like, okay, I got that one. But it's not, she talks about how devastating to follow him was. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, we were sort of following along with the Trickster podcast and just the the dark sort of cultish aspects of the group and stuff, and again, it's something we hadn't thought about, and wow, it sounds like it was pretty dark stuff.
That's where we didn't want to have any part of that.
Yeah, I don't blame you with that, of course. But one thing I have thought about is, do you think that because people that were affiliated with Carlos at the college, experienced some strange things around that guy as well, and so we're going back and forth on one side of the fence to the other. And, do you think that Carlos may have made up the bulk of these stories, but
I think he did tap into something. I think he met up with enough shamans in the Sonora deserts and spent enough time. I do really believe he did tap into other people's magic and wrote about it, and probably had his own psychedelic interpretation through it and of it. And that was, in his mind, transported him dimensionally. Which is maybe what, here is where I could say, here is where I could take the Carlos Castaneda and my story and see where some pattern is, because the voices said it's not about Carlos, don't follow him. But what he was dealing with, where Don Juan and Don Gennaro were, they were traveling over to a dimension. My voices, I would say mine, the ones I experienced, they were from another dimension. So now you could say, well, wait a minute. You know, there's not one dimension, there's multiples, and there's not just one energy from the other side, there's probably multiples. And so there is where there could be. He's just the author and the storyteller of it, as much as I am of mine. He did it his way, and he's brilliant in one way, but ultimately, he was learning about some kind of dimensional pull from these mentors. If they were real people or not, or if he took just shamans that he met along the way, had a sample of what they were teaching him, and then ran with it and made a story. But he still had a feeling, and it opened up a portal on some level that he might have not even realized. And it's not so much.
And that would explain his fear when you approached him and Fellini approached him with a voice, and he became uncomfortable. That would fall right in line.
Yeah,
with that.
he was freaked out by it. I mean, that was so unusual. Now, and again, with your information, take Carlos out of the picture. He's the storyteller. But what he's telling you was Don Juan and Don Gennaro were able to travel into some other realm, and they talked about it. And I think that is, in many different words, the dimension, wherever you want to call it, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, whatever that shift was, that they were receiving from some other place. That wormhole, I like that idea, if you want to call it. So, because, that wormhole is accessible to anyone who can go that deep, or be in the right place at the right time, or be in the magnetic pull, or be in the vortex. There's different vortexes on the earth that, you get closer. So in that case, there's some people who can glimpse into it, and Carlos glimpsed enough to write, to go off and tell great stories from using symbolisms, as what Fellini was being at the right place at the right time, trying to be pulled into something to tell, also be a great author of a story. Except Fellini was reluctant. He didn't want to be told what to do.
Interesting. Very interesting.
So I think that is, and you can even say Jesus Christ came, and some of the great metaphysicians, they came from this dimension where, this voice, inner voice, was giving a message, insightfulness of transformation.
That's a good point.
Magical realism to me.
Yeah. And when you draw the distinction between, these people that Carlos is writing about and these things that they were supposedly doing in this book, but then you and Fellini are literally experiencing that same stuff, but for real.
It's a unified field. If you use the word unified field, we just have to, we can come at it from all different angles and each have our own interpretation of that. And at the end of the day, we're kind of talking about the same thing with different perspectives.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, you could say that about a lot of religions, that are
Exactly.
essentially saying the same thing,
God.
just cultural differences and so forth. Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Well, that was incredible. I was looking forward to this interview for a long time.
Yeah, me as well.
Yeah, that was
Well, I
amazing.
hope our paths keep crossing if you're ever on the West Coast, and I'm in Pennsylvania right now.
Oh, that's close.
I'm visiting my mom.
Nice. Oh yeah,
And,
tell Mom happy birthday.
Thank you. I shall. So, ladies and gentlemen, is there anything that I can propose or propon?
Any other questions, you guys?
I don't think so. It's pretty.
That's
I'm always going to say
incredible.
keep searching because we can't
Yes.
stop. And your show must continue to meet people who have who've had a glimpse into something magical.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I hope so. I want to thank you, Christina, for your time and coming on. I know that you're in town for your mom's birthday and stuff, and so I really appreciate you taking the time and sitting down with us. This is the story that's been fascinating us. I mean, for years with Castaneda, and now you and Fellini brought into this. So it's just an amazing story. It's just phenomenal.
Yeah, when we were listening to the the thing about the many lives of Castaneda, like whether or not he made all that stuff up or whatever, like it's like the real stories are weirder.
Yeah.
Than
I know.
It's and that was what for me listening to that when it started talking about you and Fellini and all that was what really was like. That's what really got me, and I was super excited to have this interview with you as well, to actually talk to you, the person who actually experienced that stuff. It's off the hook.
It's off the hook. And you can't forget it. You just can't. But you have to go on with your life. And you have to, I want to inform people that there is something greater. There has to be faith. And to get us through, if anything, I want to help people make the most of this lifetime, because just to be here is a magical moment. And not everyone's kings and not everyone's peasants. We all get to be different, whatever we all have something to offer.
And Christina, do you have a Facebook page or a website?
I have a website. I have ChristinaEngelhardt.com. I have Towardsthe.moon.com. I have Christina Engelhardt Facebook. I have Instagram and TikTok. Both are at Towards_the.moon. So I use a lot of Towards the Moon and on YouTube, the film Towards the Moon.
Oh, wonderful.
And then you can add my name. And then my book's Towards the Moon.
We're looking at it right now.
Okay, yep, we have your book right now. So, yeah, we will be following you. I know I will be following you.
Oh, great.
Yeah, 100%. And I'll make sure that I'll put all the links to the sites that you make sure you send it to me in an email. I'll make sure that all those are listed on the episode page, so that everyone that tunes in for the episode will see the links. And
I'll follow on everything but TikTok. That's the one I've been sucked into yet.
Yeah, but thank you. This has been fascinating, and I think you are fascinating, and you're
and
the whole story is
ever want to
amazing.
do exchange reading? I would love to do exchange reading.
Oh, okay, we can do an exchange reading. I would love that.
I feel like a Zoom thing. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I've seen spirits since I was 4, so
Oh, lovely.
a long time.
Lovely.
Yeah. So again,
Wonderful.
Yes, that'd be great. I would love that. I'd be honored. Thank you. To
My pleasure, my
have a
pleasure.
reading from you.
yeah, I'll give you her email so you can be in touch.
Oh, yes, please. Blessings, namaste, and
Yes.
Namaha.
I know our paths will cross.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Many blessings, and take care, and happy birthday to your mom.
Have an awesome night.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye
Christina.
now.
Bye-bye.